I say hi to her. What about it?
This is my sister. I had a moment there where I was like, you know what happened? Now I'm like, I feel like I could have like, no, it's just like I know. It's like you're making me want to sex, and I'm like, I don't need to proceed. Oh, you're on now.
Yeah, right after y'all. People are very excited about it.
We met in the line, the elevator.
Hello. Welcome back, everyone. Welcome back. Our way back to our seats so that we can start. Can you hear me? Can people focus? We're going to go ahead and get started. Let's move our way back to our seats. Welcome back, everyone. Welcome back. Please take your seats so we can get started. Please take your seats.
Yes.
All right, everyone. So, next panel, learning the lineages, Indigenous peacemaking, restorative, transformative, and healing justice is about to begin. A couple of quick reminders before we start, though. Like I said in the beginning, move your meat, lose your seed, friends. Also, in this room, as much as you can, please try to wear your mask because we want to make the environment safe for everybody. Folks come into the room with sort of differing levels of vulnerability, so we want to make sure that we do what we can to keep everybody safe. And I'd like to turn it over to Wakumi, who's going to give us an announcement about our healing room.
Thank you, Shonda. Peace and blessings, family. Peace. My name is Wakumi. My pronouns are she, her. It's such a blessing to be here. The Beyond the Bars conference always feels like home to me. This year, I am curating a healing and spirit room. It's just to our right in room 305. There are a number of offerings in that room for you all, including some body work, massage, Reiki healing offerings. I'm going to be doing ancestral tarot reading. There are numerous self-directed stations where you can make some plant medicine to benefit you, some self-reflection station for journaling. There's a station for art making. There's a station for napping. There's a station for praying and meditating. So definitely wanting to encourage you to root down into what your spirit and body needs in addition to what's happening mentally with us, right? And socially. wanting to definitely encourage you to tend to your spirit, tend to your heart, tend to your body needs. We will be there today until 5:30, and then tomorrow from 10 to 5. Also in that space, we'll also be offering a change, loss, and transition circle. This has been a time of a lot of loss. This is also our first conference with our beloved departed Kathy Boudin in spirit with us. We know that many of us are experiencing that in different ways, right? So please join us for the transition circle. It'll be tomorrow at 11:45, all right? You all can sign up for everything and access everything in room 305.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Cameron. Nice to be here. I just want to tell you a quick bit of history. This is the 13th year of Beyond the Bars. And the conference exists because Wakumi was a student here and went to Kathy and Cheryl and was like, we should organize a conference. So that was 13 years ago. We're deep and you're here, family affair, and I just want to make sure everybody knows the history of Beyond the Bars. So.
Thank you, Wakumi. Now I'm super excited to turn it over to my dear, dear, dear colleague, Sethu Nair.
Thank you, Shonda. Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Into the afternoon. Now it's getting into the afternoon. I am so grateful to be here, and I cannot believe that I have to follow what you just experienced. I will not. I will try my best. But really, in focus today are honored guests, Christy Chapman, Mike Milton, and Armand Coleman. And we're here, Our conversation today is really about understanding the roots and the lineages of the work that we all do, whatever that really means to all of us. I know that history is complicated, and lineages are hard to root and find, and for some of us, and for some of us, we have bits and pieces to hold on to and carry forward. And so, I invite our speakers today to speak from that place, from that word, from that intent in the word lineage, rather than being able to trace ancestry. While some of us can, some of us have difficulty with that. So just acknowledging that as we have this conversation. Yeah. I would love to introduce Christy Chapman. Please take a look at the bios that are in the QR code. And I would hate to waste time reading the bios just because it's there. Really, I want to take some time having the speakers speak about their work, speak about themselves, how they honor their own tradition. So to do that, I'll first invite Christy Chapman.
Keshi Mahoe Koton Awan Dewake. Ho Christy Chapman Lechina. Ho Shiwin and Sualan Hom Sakanaka. Hom Asashina Achi Abner Filbert Lupi. Hom Anno Di Deona Ho Kakali Katan Donag Awan Chat. Hom Ahoe Hom Hotta Deakuna. Esto Kai Shiwi Deona Yatsatinamtu. What I share with you is how we greet ourselves. And so in talking about our lineages, our roots, the work that we're doing, it was pretty easy for me. Easy because it's life for us to continue to share what my mom, what my grandmother, and they have shared to me. And the way we greet one another is identifying ourselves in this place. And the last thing that I had said was identifying my parents, Abner and Filberta Lupi, and sharing with you all the clan. My mom's eagle, it's Kakeli, and my sister Cheryl is also Kakeli, but from Alaska. And my dad's clan is Turkey, which is my paternal side, but we go with our mother's side. And I share it with you what our people, or my grandma, would always remind us is, don't be ashamed to be Zuni. I know with what we've heard, that's been difficult. And for a while there, I was ashamed to speak my language. And it took going to law school to reaffirm that all those endless time of this teaching has passed down. And I have to be proud. And we're in this together. My now new brother shared. And with that, I want to let you know that I'm happy to share our ways of doing things. We call it Hotnawan Haidoshnana, our ways, our laws, or core values. And when Sahir shared with us our question, again, it felt it's gonna be okay. It's okay to be me. It's okay to share our Indigenous ways of resolving issues and disputes, because it's something that has been with my people. When I greeted you all this morning, I said, Hom a ho'i. Ho'i means people, my people. So we're all in this ulohnana, in this world as one. And so with that, I will pass it on to Armand, or Mike.
What's up, y'all? Good morning. What's up, y'all? Good morning. Good morning. Thank you. I like a good call and response. My name is Mike Milton. I'm the executive director and founder of an organization in St. Louis called Freedom Community Center. And what we do is that we use restorative peacemaking practices, but also transformative justice to address serious violence. But we also organize survivors of violence toward abolition. We believe that the legal system is violent, encourages violence, generates violence, is all things harmful and rooted in white supremacy and racial violence. And because of that, we cannot exist and create our systems of safety without the interruption from the state. So that must mean we must attack the state. So that's our work. Me personally, I am a black man, as you probably have seen or know. But I'm also formerly incarcerated. I spent 19 months in prison for harm that I've done in my communities. And I came to this particular set of practices because someone was loving and gracious enough with me to sit with me every week and show me what community was, show me what belonging was, show me what mentorship was and love was. And through that work that he did with me and also introducing me to other people who can do the same thing for me, it broke the shells of trauma around my heart. It told me that I had an opportunity at life and I can thrive. But more than anything, it shows me that I was worthy of love, and that transformed me. And so we do that work with people. As an example of our work, we have a person in our organization participate. His name is Bruce. Unfortunately, Bruce had a couple years ago, he was driving drunk, and he ran into a pole. A person was ejected. His best friend was ejected from the vehicle, and unfortunately, he died. They charged Bruce with second-degree murder. They charged him with armed criminal action and other things. They didn't know that Bruce had just lost his mom 2 days before. Bruce spent 11 months in pretrial detention. My team, or our team, our community went to the courts and actually demanded that he be released from pretrial detention. But we also worked with Bruce to take accountability for that harm that he did to his friend and to his family. And in that process, which the family agreed, in that process, we worked with Bruce for at least 4 months. All the way up to this point, he's still our participant. But we worked with Bruce and just sat with him through all of the pain, rage, and confusion that he may have. We also worked with the family and sat with them through all the rage, and confusion that they may have. And as that process happened and unfolded, the family, us and Bruce's family, all went to the courts and demanded that his cases be dropped. Bruce was facing 30 years in prison. He would not have to do a day in prison because of that work. So that's the idea of our work. I came to it because somebody loved me, and we know how powerful love can be. So that's our work.
My name is Armand Coleman, and I will say I came to this work first as a perpetrator of harm. I was convicted of a crime, a loss of life crime at the age of 17, and I was sentenced to life in prison. 20 years into my incarceration, I went from being one of the youngest men in the prison to, I should let me correct that, I went from being a child in the prison to one of the oldest men in prison. And at that time, I didn't know anything about trauma. I didn't believe in trauma. I was born and raised in Queens, New York, and I didn't, Queens, and I didn't believe that trauma was real. I'm gonna keep it 100. I thought it was something that white people made up to justify their behaviors. It wasn't until somebody sat me down and said, "Look at this risk factor list and tell me how many things on this list did you encounter." And when I started, and they explained to me that this is a proven science that if you experienced, I think it was like, I don't remember the number, but they said if you experience a certain number of these risk factors, then you're at a higher risk to transition to criminality and violence. And I started checking the list, and I was checking every single box. The only box I didn't check was having a family member die or being sexually assaulted or raped as a child. And I should have checked that box. By the time I didn't have the courage to check it. And that made me start to think, like, wait a minute, I didn't have a chance as a child, right? I mean, I was smart enough to realize that. But how I actually came to this work, I would say, is because of somebody who's not here. Her name is Sonia Shaw. She came to the prison I was in, and I remember she did an exercise one day, and she said, now at this time I'm considered like one of the baddest guys in the system, and I'm accepting it, and I'm like, you know what, I'm proud of it. And I remember she said, whoever in this room think there's a victim, go to one side of the room. Whoever think they're the perpetrator of a victimizer, go to the other side of the room. And I remember I was like stuck in the middle. I didn't know which way to go. And then she was like, no, you was a victim, go on this side. And that's something you don't accept, especially in a prison setting, that you were a victim, right? So from that day, I kind of like began the journey of actually just like processing every single crime that happened to me, right? So I learned through that process that hundreds of crimes happened against me before I ever committed one crime. So since then, I've been on a journey to actually not only continue to heal from the stuff that happened to me as a child, but live my amends through my work.
In what each of you have shared, I can't help but think about, like, what are the values that you bring and you carry forward? You know, we talk about lineage, and that can be your poetry, that can be your ancestry, that can be your life experience. And when you think about values and how you carry that forward into the work you do, I'd love for you to speak to that, and then also share about the work that you do.
So one thing that I usually do when I start talking is breathe. Breathe, because as I'm talking, I have to remember I'm standing here, not only on the shoulders of those 3 or 4 ladies, and the ones that are on the screen on their shoulders, I'm also standing on the shoulders of those who went before me. And just recently I lost our grandmother, and that, my grandmother, was the epitome of the peacemaker, but also when we talk about our backgrounds and our degrees and all that means nothing if we don't know who we are. And usually when I start these talks, I have a picture of my great-grandpa and my grandmother. And the work that I do is a result of what they instilled into my grandparents, my mom, and now down to me. The things that they did then is still taking place within our family. And I love the quote that Miss Cheryl Fairbanks shared in that sovereignty begins at home. Sovereignty is where I learned those values from Tsaisihtis and Bawikati. They raised 7 kids back in Zuni, and it's in a rural area in New Mexico. If you don't know where that is, it's in these and I'll say, I don't mean to correct my mentor, in the occupied territory of our homelands. And so what they shared was those values of always putting kids first. You're always thinking about the kids for the next 7 generations and beyond. And that, the value of nurturing the young. And know your language. If you know your language, as Ms. Cheryl was shared with her from her father, if you know your language, you know your laws. And from there, so what I'm sharing with you is our ways, our laws, our core values. From Tsaisihtis and Bawikati, those core values was language, nurturing, and prayer. Nothing works in our way of doing without prayer. You bring that sacredness back to it. And I think we all heard that from the earlier, is how much when we, in the system we live in now, it's taught us to separate your faith from church and state is basically what it teaches us. But in our indigenous ways, we have to live in community. Where did we get our laws? We got it from the One Most High. And so we never separate. And so the work that I do, I work with children. I represent children in abuse and neglect cases. And I also was a nurse. And so that core value of nurturing has always been a strength in terms of when you're taking care of others, you have to listen. And peacemaking it's something I grew up learning from our ways. When I say our ways, it's a way of life. You heard Judge Abinadi and I call them my gurus, my mentors, but it's universal in terms of what Judge Vaughn said. When somebody comes to your home, come in, sit down. Are you hungry? Are you thirsty? What can I get you? It's that automatic, regardless of who you are, that respect. And so peacemaking is life for me and for what was shared with me. And so in the work that I do when I'm a child's advocate, when I'm representing their best interests in abuse and neglect cases, the justice system, it's so adversarial, and they're trying to decide which in custody cases and child abuse neglect cases, you're trying to decide what's in the best interest of the child. And you get this system of, well, let's have mediation, let's have the parties come together. But really, it's a room full of state workers, room full of cookie cutter plans, and the parents aren't talking. It's their attorneys, it's the state talking, and you don't hear anything from them, which is sad. And so that's the system that I'm trying to dismantle, deconstruct, and reconstruct to what were our indigenous ways of making sure that the child is put at the heart and the center. I'm going to share a story with you which empowers me why I need to do the work that I'm doing. So in our Zuni way, we were told that on our journey to where we call home now in Shuina, the people came upon a river. And at the river, the I don't like to call them elders. I have a new term now, which is from Cheryl, is our beloveds, told the people, we're going to have to cross this river. And as a child, I heard this as a child. It's been repeated over and over. And as a child, I heard this and I was so like captivated. So the people get to the river and they were instructed, we're going to cross the river. It's turbulent waters. Whatever you do, don't let go of your kids. So put them on your backs, get in the water. So they get in the water and they're going across the river. Well, they're holding, and all of a sudden, their children feel different. The parents who heeded the instruction, they just held on tight. The parents who freaked out, got scared, they let go. When they let go, the children fell in the water. Those children became the fish, the tadpole, the frogs, the creatures of the waters. But those who held on, once they got to the other side of the river, their children took back their normal form or regular form. That story to me, for me, I just imagined the creatures of the water. It didn't dawn on me until later, even though they probably told us what the story meant, but it didn't dawn on me until later that in life, there's going to be many challenges, and we have to consider our children to carry on that next generation, to carry on those teachings that Creator had given us. And with that, it's always never letting go. Hold on with white knuckle intensity, no matter what it takes, because they're going to be our future mothers and fathers and beloveds. What it also reminded me or tells me is our brothers and sisters, those kids that were let go, they weren't forgotten. They still give life. They still have life, which is why we're so connected to, I don't remember the correct term, but Manu alluded to was we're all part of this earth that sustains us. And so we have to take care of our waters, of our lands. And with that, again, the work that I do, I integrate these, what we consider peacemaking, integrated, and always invoking with whether it's human life or animal life, that rule of respect. We give respect to all living beings regardless of how they appear. And so with that work, I'm also, within my own community, the effects of assimilation, the effects of cookie cutter, boilerplate constitutions that our people didn't know but were forced to accept, forgot about our ways, our laws, our core values. They forgot. So it took me having to think that I had to go to law school because I was a nurse before. And I saw the injustices of my community. When I say injustices, I saw the effects of assimilation. But like him, I didn't know what that was the root of the causes within all our communities. And so as a nurse, I saw that. I saw going to court, getting referrals from kids, for kids. They weren't making their wellness appointments. And I happened to go to a court hearing and I saw the punishment system. I saw my classmates who I laughed with, I grew with, I went to their homes with, in orange jumpsuits, shackled, knowing that they just had a child. I'm like, this isn't right. Like, they're not harmful. They're not gonna flee. Where are they gonna go? And that made me sick. It made me feel like I had to go to law school to do something different. But law school, I'm telling you, it was counter to what I grew up knowing. In our Zuni way, how are we related? How are we to cooperate? Atekan, how are we to be in community? All those things that I grew up knowing when I got to law school, it was counter to that. I think it was shared earlier, law school was very adversarial. And what I knew growing up, I started to feel like I was getting small, like this other way of doing was what I needed to learn, yet I felt even smaller. And I think Judge Vaughn, is, I credit Cheryl Fairbanks for reigniting and reaffirming that peacemaking is not an alternative, but it's our way of life. And we need to be proud, not be ashamed, stand up and be proud of who our ways of doing things is what has allowed me to be up here and talk to you all in my own native language. It's because of those teachings that I incorporate into the work that I'm doing. And so in addition to the representing kids, I'm re-educating the educated. Because in my community, looking at the outside for answers has really benefited what those federal policies were meant to do, which is to conquer and divide. And in our communities, that's what we see. And so that's my work. And I'm from the Pueblo of Zuni, but the work that I call is Hotnawan Hai Toshnan, our ways, our laws, core values, just resharing and reaffirming that way of doing and resolving issues and disputes.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. I really appreciate your words. The question is, what is our values? What are our personal values? Just want to take a breath there. I feel like I know that my personal values are safety, and I think that's interwoven with what we call communal safety and communal identity, that we are safe because we create systems of safety within our communities. So for me, that means both personal. For me, what does it mean for me to regulate myself, for me to be well, for me to receive love, for me to give love, but also what does it mean for us to create systems of safety around us because we know that we are not safe and whole without ourselves. And so the example that I have of that for me personally is I grew up in a neighborhood that others would probably have said is violent. A lot of things existed within our neighborhoods, including guns, including et cetera. I'm from the hood. That's where I came from. But in that, it didn't feel, and also we were poor, but it didn't feel that way because we were so intertwined with each other. So in my neighborhood, we had, grandmothers who couldn't work anymore, but they found a way to get money from the state to keep everybody kids, right? When someone died in our community, we pooled our money to help somebody bury their baby. When we needed toilet paper and somebody didn't have it, we knew who to go get it. We even had neighborhood social workers. They wasn't like the traditional social work, but they knew how to get your food stamps, right? Like they knew how to apply for applications. That was a system of safety for us. Over time, what happened during the rise of incarceration and the caging of Black people, they thrived off of breaking up our communities by ripping mothers and fathers out of our neighborhoods, right? Mass incarceration did everything that it possibly could to keep us oppressed and caged. And so they fought against the communities of safety that we have, but that's in our lineage as Black people. When I learned that Black women used to create shelters in their basements for safety when their partners were abusing them and harming them, they would have cots and they would have warm blankets and they would have tea ready and made. And to learn that people found out about these systems of safety and wanted to co-opt it. Like Black people, it's in our lineage that in spite of the oppression that we have against us, we create our own safety. And so I think the value, or what I'm trying to express is the value that we have is that everybody in this room have a desire to be safe, healthy, whole, and well. And that cannot happen if we're by ourselves, right? So I think that's the first one. The second one I would say is faith. When I look at the tradition of Black people in our communities, especially when I think about my grandmother, right? Like that's the first person I think about because I was raised as a grandma's child. In our living room, she had it was an altar really, but it was a pictures of the people that we lost in obituaries. It was us, her family. It was flowers there. That was the altar. When I saw that my grandmother used to go outside and put her hand on her chest and take a breath when things got too heavy for her, she was centering herself. She had her own practices of safety. When I think about, I was just in Africa a couple months ago doing somatics. That's one of our modalities. But there was this one particular situation where we were doing this pilgrimage and we were going across the Atlantic Ocean. And the fishermen, we was on this hand-carving boat. And I'm thinking to myself, like, I don't know. This is a whole ocean. This is not a lake. This is the ocean. You know what I'm saying? There's too many people on this boat already. And it's about as long as this table. It just was not a good setup. But what happened was that the boat started to lean a little bit to the left because it was too heavy. The water started to fill the boat. And I heard the fisherman who was speaking in Ghanaian, like, going wild. Like they were scared and nervous, and they were saying they was asking for help from another boat from across the sea. I'm like, they can't hear you, y'all. It was nervous. So everybody in the boat like holding on to the sides, like, oh my God, are we finna drown? I'm thinking to myself, like, am I about to hop off and like try to swim to the shore? I'm gonna die. So that was happening. But the fishermen in the back of the boat, they started to sing a song in their own native tongue. And they sung the song, and as they scooped out water out of the boat, and as it got murkier and the waves got heavier, they started to get louder with the song. And eventually the fishermen, they stopped freaking out. They started laughing. Now everybody on the boat, because we don't know what they're saying, like, why y'all laughing? Like, this is weird. But what happened was I asked one of the tour guides, and he was like, they were praying to the ancestors that live in the sea because, they dumped our bodies in the Atlantic Ocean to hold up the boat till we got to safety. Like, they had faith. They believed in the midst of everything that was happening to us, in the midst of the danger and the lack of safety that we had, they believed that something bigger and greater was there to protect us. We see that within Black communities. In my community, my grandmother, she went to church. It was the old Baptist church, but she had to believe in something because the circumstances said everything opposite of what was safe and well for her. And so a value for us isn't just about a peacemaking program. It isn't just about like some cool, restorative justice situation or just having language around it. It really is about we have to have a faith that's bigger than ourselves to sustain us in this movement. And so for me, that's one of my core beings. When I think about our practices around nonviolence, when I think about our practices around peacemaking work, or even building power for the sake of undoing the effects of mass incarceration and really fighting for the abolition of people, it comes from faith. We know that we cannot fight this battle. We have a well-organized system against us that's thousands, hundreds of years old. Is literally rooted in everything opposite of well-being for Black people. We have to believe in something that's bigger than ourselves. And then that thought must cause us to be a collective with each other. And the reason why we do peacemaking practices is because we know that we have to be one, right? We have to have some type of synergy within ourselves and a community within ourselves in order to fight a well-organized system. And so that's one of my values. Another one of my values is honestly play. What does it look like for us to have joy as a means of resistance? To be creative, right? One of the modalities that we do as one of our therapeutic modalities is play and wonder. So some of our guys who have never left the hood before are like trying to learn how to skateboard. Like they just want to explore, right? One of them, another situation that we did was that we took them to the boxing ring, and it was just powerful. I wasn't there, but my team was there. But it was powerful because out of the 7 guys that was there, 3 of them broke down and cried because they never had an outlet in their lives that both allowed for play and also allowed for them to regulate themselves through some type of force. And so I truly believe that a key to our well-being and our safety and our health is play. That we must center that we must learn how to be our youthful selves again without the stress and pressures of the world or the stress and pressures that we have on ourselves. So I'd lay that there. But those are the things that keep me well. Those are the things that we try to incorporate in our communities because we think that's the key way to strengthen and well-being in our communities.
I would say primary thing that I kind of value is community. And I love how Mike broke that down at first because that's the community I grew up in, right? People were saying that my neighborhood was one of the most dangerous. However, I felt safe there, right? Everybody knew me, and I couldn't hardly do any wrong there, right? So, but imagine getting snatched out of that environment at 17, right? And placed in the most dangerous environment you could be in, a prison, and stuck there for 28 years. And that's literally like, was my situation. So in that time, my community is not the same. If I go my neighborhood now, nobody's there that was there before. It's like, it's weird to me. I know houses on every block that I go to, but it don't exist anymore. So my community is that, and it's founded in my work, so that's why I bring it up, is that I grew up in prison. So when I went in, I was the youngest. Like I said, when I left, I was one of the oldest, and I was one of the most respected. And a lot of guys, so I did 28 years in prison, 22 years in a maximum security prison, over 12 years in solitary confinement. And when I transitioned from maximum security prison to a medium security prison of MCI Norfolk, which is a community prison, it was a lot of people there that knew me and respected me. But I would say one thing is that transitioning from a supermax prison to a medium security prison was harder for me than transitioning from prison to society. And I would not have made it were it not for
You got father in here. Just take it easy. You're all one.
I would not have made it were it not for dozens of men who are lifers now, who are still in prison. They literally came to me every day and said, listen, this is where you need to be. This is what you need to do. And it helped me navigate that environment. And when I left the prison, they walked me out. And given the mission, like, yo, you know what, you're gonna be the one to help us get out of here. Because we recognized early in our work that that restorative justice was gonna tear down those walls, right, and get men out. True to course. When we started this work, it was 9 men in the basement, all of whom were lifers. We were saying that we're gonna get out and we're gonna lead this work. Now everybody's out except for 2 men, right? To Mike's point, we had faith we were gonna get out, but we didn't see a pathway to getting out. But we're out now, and everything that we did internally inside the prison, we said we're gonna do outside. I'm learning early on that this work had real world application, and that it could be applied outside, and that's exactly what we do. Another one is relationships, right? So inside, we was able to build a relationship with people who are judges, of all people, district attorneys, who's like the primary enemy of incarcerated people, right? Yeah, it's funny, but I tell this all the time that the craziest thing I've ever seen in prison, and I've seen a lot of things. The craziest thing I've ever seen was we had a progressive district attorney win, and Men Inside worked on that campaign. When she won, men would walk on the quad cheering. What district attorney? Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he likes walking the quad. I can't get that vision out of my head. It's like it's amazing. And true to her word, she got into office, created a conviction integrity unit, and a lot of people who's after 20, 30, even 40 years in prison are now seeing freedom, right? So just something about our work, the work that we do today. We work with Department of Youth Services. We have an aspiration to be at every inlet of the justice system, if you will, the criminal legal system, and that's where we're at. So we work with the children in detention and youth services, as we like to say, the younger ourselves. If I had somebody like Mike talking to me at 15, 16, 17, I know for a fact I would have listened and I would have followed his direction. So that's what we actually doing with the Department of Youth Services in Massachusetts. We work with the law students. Massachusetts is a hub for law schools, right? So what we do is we get proximate to the future stewards of the system, and we actually take them through a restorative process while they're in law school, knowing that they're going to be the future judges, the future lawyers, the future prosecutors. And we just let them see how the process works, and by the end of the process, all of them are making a commitment to be more restorative when they start to practice. So that's one of our goals that we do. And the thing I'm most excited about is that we went from, under my directorship, from having one person as a running the organization to having 11 people in the organization, 8 of whom are formerly incarcerated, 5 of whom are lifers. And so we actually have them doing the same work that they wanted to do when they were inside, now when they're outside. And mental health, to us, mental health is big, it's important. You need that coming home. And it's mandated mostly by the parole board. If you're a lifer, you have to have mental health. But one thing that we were able to do at the Transformational Prison Project was to create our own wellness and restoration system, because we recognize that the clinical system causes harm. We recognize that. And I recognize that through my own example, coming home, wanting to do this work with this organization, not having a job for like a year or having a part-time job. My clinician, thinking that she was helping me, was like, you know what? You've been at this for a year already. You're not making enough money. We went through the whole exercise. She said, you need to get a real job because, you're not going to be able to make it here. And to me, that was just fuel, because I realized that many of the guys who were founders of this organization came on before me, and they were discouraged in that same way, and they didn't continue the path, and now they're immersed in works that are not taking advantage of the talents they had, right? So we created our own wellness and restoration center with a gift from the Urban Foundation. And we were able to hire clinicians that are formerly incarcerated, clinicians that have system working with people who are incarcerated. And what they do is they actually give us mental health. They create mental health circles, mental health. They take on clients. It's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing, and it's basically made for them by them. And all of them are trained in our restorative justice. In order for them to be on, they have to actually have that concept. And now they're going into the institutions, helping the men and the women prepare for their release before they get out, right? And pairing them with clinicians before they get out, and pairing them with community circles of mental health before they get out, which is beautiful. So, and again, this work started in institutions. So we started with one institution, with one program, expanded to 13 different programs. There's 6 different institutions in Massachusetts. So our goal is just like continue to do that. As men come home, as the women come home, bring them on board, and then get them doing the same thing. And just perpetuate the work.
try more. Each of you talked about relationships, and each of you talked about how you often talk about beloved community. And I do this work in the frame of with this work group called Hidden Water, and we use healing circles to heal the impact of child sexual abuse harm in the family system. So people who were harmed, people who caused harm, other people who are indirectly impacted because we're part of a family system. And I have to say, maybe because of the personal lived experience, that I struggle with community responsibility. And I would love for you to speak to that because, so many of us who do work in the restorative justice, especially the restorative justice field or area frame, we forget about the community part. We try to just bring two people together again and again, thinking that's all we need to do. And can you talk to us about community responsibility and what community accountability is really for you?
Community responsibility. It's going to tie into the seeds of justice, the theme of this in Ashiwi. It's a year-round practice. With the beginning of the new year, every household member in Zuni, their family will get seeds to plant corn, seeds to plant beans, all the native seeds. And as Ashiwi, I can't come out here and be in my community and be in Albuquerque. I can't boast, I can't blow my own horn because I have a place in my Zuni way, in our community. I have a responsibility. I have a responsibility and I'm accountable to represent my community, my family, my parents. And I see that as in the global world, I see how there's a disconnect. There's a disconnect from who we are and disconnect from our place in our respective communities. And so as far as responsibility with the work, whatever I'm doing, am I meeting the bar of Tsaisihitza? Am I meeting the bar of Bawikati? They set that bar as far as what is your role? What is your role in whatever work you're doing? And so meeting in community, Zunis know that they have to care for one another. They have to take care of one another to sow that seed. Every year, it's like a renewal. We all are not perfect, and we all need that support. We all need that accountability. And those seeds that are given to each family member, of course, we all have a choice. We all have a choice to use that single seed and continue to sustain life food giving, but also just that symbolic of we all have a choice. Mm-hmm. And so that responsibility within each of us is renewed each year. If we forget our ways, it always happens. I mean, if I could bring you guys to my community and just see that work is still going on. But again, we see the effects of influence and how that can undermine that work, that peacemaking work. So with that, I love what the theme of this was called, is seeding justice. Justice, as I heard it explained earlier, it's that rule of respect. And in the work that we all do, we have to be mindful of respecting our faults. We learn from it, we grow from it. And with the parents who let go of their kids, I can only imagine how guilty they might have felt, but community was still there to let them know, yes, they forgot. Their kids are not in their form anymore, but they're still giving life. And so respecting and bringing them back into community, those are the concepts that responsibility and community bring. Share it, give it. Usually have a basket, and I wish I had a basket, but I'm giving the basket to Mike.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, it brings to mind a Gwendolyn Brooks. I'm sure y'all know where I'm going, but we also have a little inserts that we put in there, so I'm gonna read it real quick. She says, this is we call it the center practice of we. We are each other's harvest. Without one another, we have no plenty, no supply, no abundance. With each other, we have power of the oneness and love. We are each other's business. We have to make the well-being of each and every person on this planet our business, our commitment, our duty, and our promise. We are each other's magnitude and bond. Alone, we are nothing. Together, we, the immensity of the power of love. We are all on the same ship together. If it sinks, we all sink. But together in love, we are one. Yes. And we read that and we center that. It's because we cannot exist without alone. And which is interesting of why incarceration is used to continue to oppress people, because everybody incarcerated is connected to another body. Yes. That if they can break up the family system, we're a lot more weaker, right? So I truly believe in the center of the core of who we are, and many of people in this room, that we're not free unless we're all free. That if I'm incarcerated, then you're incarcerated. Like, we are all naturally connected in life. If I want coffee, I gotta go somewhere who's gonna make a coffee, right? If I wanna hear a word, I gotta go somebody to hear a word. And we see that in our work very distinctly. Like the guys that we work with, or the people that we work with, we the first assessment, we see how chronic lonely they are, right? The fact how trauma also makes us lonely, right? Trauma also has the effect of making us isolated. That's the power of the trauma. But we see the breaking of the trauma when people feel like they're safe enough to be connected to somebody else. When they feel like they belong to somebody, where they feel like they're not being judged or they're being understood. And so that's really our practices. Our practices is empathy. What does it look like to sit with somebody through everything that they may have without judgment, with deep understanding? And that empathy leads to a connection that cannot be broken. And when we are connected under one body, we are so strong that we can undo something as strong as the legal system. And so I hate to keep bringing that point up, but it's true. That it's not enough to just continue to have thought processes and thought language around community. We have to actually do it. And doing it means that we must be gracious to one another. It means that we must be understanding to one another. And so I think, when I think about the beloved community and us having or being able to exist in the world, that means that we have to have each other at close. And that means that we have to honor each other's differences. The way that we try to describe it is kind of like a body. You know, I might be the pinky toe. You might be the pinky finger. But if we want to be a well-being body, then we have to acknowledge each other's role in the creation of this body and the function of this body. And so when I think about the beloved community, and when I think about what it means for community, it means safety, truly. It means that we have a collective responsibility and collective identity. And that means that if you do something that harms this community, then we must address it. When we go in front of that judge and we tell the judge, like, no, we actually want that person released, we saying, actually, we want to deal with him. We can deal with this our own way and our own way. We do not need you to interrupt us. We do not need you to put 17 years on him. No, actually, we can deal with it. Give me my fucking people back. That's what we're saying. In the spirit of Harriet Tubman. And so it's not just about like a feel-good program for us. For us, it's about true accountability and a call to look at the harm that you're doing to our community, and look at the beauty that you can add to our community once you deal with the harm that happened to you. And you can add something to this collective that makes us all better and stronger. So I'll stop there. I think that's what we believe. We believe at our core that we are each other's business. You are my business. I am your business. I want you well because I want to be well. And so that's how we look at it as an interweb.
What I would say is that when it comes to accountability, I was probably like the least accountable person ever before I started Restorative Justice. And even when I started it, I was like, I'm not taking accountability for nothing. Like, it's mad stuff that already happened to me. So I love how Mike ended on that point, because that's literally what happened to me. Somebody said, yo, this is what happened to you. Yeah. They acknowledged what happened to me. It was even a district attorney in one of my spaces. It was a federal district attorney. And he acknowledged that everything that happened, even though I take full accountability for what I did now, he acknowledged that my conviction was false, that my conviction was like manufactured. And he's like, yo, I wasn't the one that prosecuted you, but I apologize on behalf of that office. That should not have happened in that way, regardless if he was guilty or not, right? Up until that point, I wasn't taking accountability for nothing, because I thought nobody was taking accountability for what they did. But that opened the doors for me to kind of like start taking accountability. And to your point, when you spoke about the sexual harm stuff, right? The last group I ever facilitated was a Restorative Justice Retreat, which is our flagship program when I was incarcerated. We had it every third weekend of June, and it's like 300-400 people come in, and the theme was sexual harm. One thing I realized is that the hardest thing for me ever to process and do was to speak about me being sexually harmed. I mean, that was like impossible. The fact that I'm able to say it now is like amazing. Yeah. I remember. Thank you. I remember I first tried to say it in the circle, and my mouth literally wouldn't let me say it. I literally got stuck, and then the more I shared it, the more easy it got for me. But again, I was incarcerated as a youthful offender. So I learned, like, through RJ that the prison population is the highest sexually assaulted population on the planet. And that's not while they're incarcerated, that's before they even get incarcerated. And I know it's underreported because they asked me about that when I went to prison, and I was like, I vehemently denied it. Like, come on, dude, what's wrong with you? Hell no, it didn't happen to me. But once I learned that fact, a lot of things like came into place for me. If you're in the environment of the prison settings that I was in, the most hated and the most least accountable on both sides, as victims and as survivors, it's gonna be as survivors and as perpetrators of that harm, is sexual harm. People do not address that in that space on either side. So we made a bold move to actually make that the theme of that year's retreat. And the same year we had a youthful offender group, which is something that we also brought to the outside, where this group would actually only service people who were convicted of a crime under the age of 18. And my thought was, especially having known most of them, because I knew a lot of them, was that if you raised to a crime, especially to the level of homicide as a youth, you had to have that happen to you, right? And it was 34 men in the space, and I shared it for the first time publicly. It was hard, and it was like the most powerful space I ever held. More than half the men admitted for the first time that it happened to them as well. And it only took the courage of one person doing it. Yeah. Then the next person did it. The next person did it. It's kind of like, but I want to touch on your accountability piece too, and the connection piece in the community. 'Cause I was telling Mike last night when we were talking. I remember I was 5 years into my sentence, and my mother wrote me a letter, and she was like, she told me straight up, she said, "You killed my son." And I'm like, and then she went on to like talk about all the dreams and the aspirations she had for me and how smart I was, and like how I actually started following my uncles and other people in the community as opposed to her. And that was the first time I ever looked at it like what I did was connected to somebody else. I looked at it like I was telling Mike yesterday. I looked at it like, yo, if me and Mike's in a gang and I do something to Mike, he signed up for it. If he do something to me, I signed up for it. Who cares? It's nobody else's business. That's the first time I said, wow, man, what about Mrs. Milton? Right? What about? I never, like, I know it sounds crazy, right? But I was like 22 before I even thought of that. Like, wow, it's people connected to people who are gonna miss Mike. I mean, he's gonna be hurt if Mike goes or if I go, and that people are hurting now in the community because I'm gone. I never even made that connection. So one thing I love about the program that we do, and I don't call it a program, anybody that's in our organization actually went through years of going through circle processes, all of which we created, and they're committed to living this work as a lifestyle. They committed to living as a lifestyle, and the opportunities that we create from the work in the community is for them to make amends for the harm they caused in the community. And the dynamic that we've done at the Transformational Prison Project is we took what was considered the most incorrigible ones in the state. Literally the ones they said could not change, would not ever do good work, are the people that are on our staff. And they all had transformed their lives, and they all are like literally like giving back to their communities in ways that you can't even like quantify. So yeah, I'll stop there.
One thing that I keep thinking about is how we get in each other's way as we're all working towards much of the same. And that's all I'll say. I'll just invite you to speak to that. Like, how do we do that? How do we get out of the way?
Getting out of the way. I like to share stories as I'm telling you this. Another story with as told to us as our migration to our homelands is there came a place where our people had to go their separate ways. One group had to go south and the other group got to stay where they're at. And the Zunis who stayed where we're at now, they had a choice. Well, both sides had a choice. They had to pick a an egg that was speckled black, or a beautiful colorful egg. The Zunis that remained here, where we're currently residing, they chose the beautiful egg. And the Zunis who chose the ugly speckled egg, they went south. So the Zunis who chose the beautiful egg, when it cracked open, it was the crow. It wasn't the pretty macaw that the speckled egg was down south. And when you're talking about what can we do to get out of the way, I'm moving now into that wall that was built to the southern border. And in our Zuni way, that's a big no-no, because in our stories, it's our people we're supposed to meet up again. But how can we meet up if there's that wall? So in the work that we're doing, I really appreciate the alliances like Life Comes From It with Judge Abinadi and the work that she's doing with Judge Van, and the various roles that each of them have. How do we get out of the way? We share about our work that we're doing. One of the things that I also want to share with you all is kind of going back to that prior question, that disconnect. For the kids that I represent, a majority of them, their parents have lost their way. And they don't know who they are or where they come from. And one of the things that I shared with a Zuni child who didn't know her background, who didn't know her grandma, or who didn't know her great-grandma, I share with them this story about her great-grandmother, who I knew, and how she would always pray for her kids. And this my client never knew that. She never knew that someone was praying for her. She never knew her place in community. By breaking that barrier and letting her know who she is, where she comes from. That was the start of her setting aside that anger. I think Armand said it well when his mom, said what he said, what she said to him as far as the hopes and dreams that she had for her son. Breaking down barriers so that we're not confined into this box, but remembering that when that box is undone, it forms a circle and it flows, and that openness allows others to come in and share what we're doing right now. How we break those barriers is sharing the work that we're doing. For far too long, I was so afraid to share about my Zuni way because I thought the Western way of doing things was the correct way. What I saw on TV was the way we have to live life. That's chasing after the wind. It's never gonna happen because there's no perfect. There is community, there is relatedness, there is cooperativeness. And by breaking down the wall, it's doing and practicing those things, remembering that we're all in this together. That I'll pass it to Mike.
I'd love to. I want to talk to you. You were so great. I think about, I hope that I'm answering your question, so stop me if I'm not. But when I think about getting out of the way, especially as it ties to community accountability, I think of this story. I was 17. My uncle, who was in his 30s or something like that, he was picking me up from work, and they got into an argument with his girlfriend who was driving. He began to harm his girlfriend in front of me. I'm thinking to myself, and he's 7'1", big guy. I'm like, I'm gonna have to fight him. Like, I'm just gonna have to. I can't sit back and watch him do this to her. We fought. He dragged me out of the car, continued to fight me. I saved the details, but I was pretty beat up. And the first thing that happened, oddly enough, I was walking up the highway ramp because this happened on the highway. I'm trying to flag down somebody, the police. No one stopped for me. I called my aunt. She called me. She came and picked me up. And she took me to my grandmother's house. And that's where actually my uncle stayed. And so he was staying somewhere else. And so eventually, after all of the rage kind of calmed down about what happened that day, we set a meeting. And they prepared me for this meeting. They was like, we need to talk as a family unit. Now, we didn't know anything about restorative justice or peacemaking. Again, it's in the lineage of Black people. We sat in our living room, and this had been a problem with Steve for a while. He was consistently had anger problems. He was on and off substances. He was just in a situation. By the end of that meeting, Steve said to me, looked me in my face, he said, I think it's best if I go somewhere outside of St. Louis, because I understand that I'm doing harm. And honestly, it feels like I can't control it. And that felt like so much justice for me. It wasn't about calling the police or him being locked up or he acknowledged his harm, the consequences of his harm, the consequences that's happening with the people around him too. He said, I need to take some time to figure what's going on with me. Steve went to Arkansas and did 3 months of anger management. And he came back, and when he came back, he brought me a pair of Air Forces. That was his flowers to me. A pair of kicks, because that's what I loved. But that was, but that was him saying to me, an offering. I acknowledge that I need to move out of the way because I am affecting the family system. I'm affecting the family safety. I'm affecting the safety of people around me. And so I need to step away so I can do what's best for us and the community. It was about him, but also about us. He understood that his harm was harming us. So I think about that even in the small, minute ways, even to the big ways of organizations arguing over funding. What does it look like for us to make peace so that we can get out of each other's way, so we can sustain the collective? We cannot move unless we're together. So I hope I answered your question, but that's what I thought about when you said it. I thought about all the many of ways in which people want to take accountability and they understand that they must remove themselves so they can get right with themselves, so they can get right with the community.
What immediately comes to mind when you ask that question is I have to reflect myself, right? So it's like healing. I think you have to do your own work first, right? Because that's what actually gets in the way. Everybody I ever had a problem with, anybody that I ever like attacked, it was all based upon stuff that I was dealing with internally. It really had nothing to do with them. And I think that's being reflective. It's reflected in a lot of problems I have today. Doesn't matter if it's people in my close relationships, people in my organizations. So I think the way you get out of the way is that you don't. You go through it. You go through it. You work through it. The biggest instruction I ever got when I first started this work is like it's going to be some uncomfortable stuff, but you have to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. And when I started like to embody that, everything started to come into place. I tried to realize that everything that I used to do was rooted in something that happened to me before. So just bringing sunlight to it, revealing it through healing it. Healing it through revealing it is a big thing. If you got secrets, you're gonna be sick, right? Because you only get sick as your secrets, as they say. But yeah, so to me, it's like just working through it, through the process. And that's one thing I love about restorative justice. It always creates a space for you to be able to do that.
I have one more question, and then we'll pause at 1:15. But the last and the only question that's left for me is liberation. Talk about liberation, and I won't frame it any more than that.
Liberation. Oh my gosh. Going home right now, it's happening right now as I speak. The women are gathering. And one thing I love about my community is there's no boss, there's nobody dictating. Right now what's happening is bread baking. There's night dance is gonna happen tonight. And bread baking, you're coming together. You're coming together and everyone has kind of just fills in a role. Someone has to go get the cedar for to clean out the oven. The oven's gotta get lit. Somebody has to go get the wood to put into the big oven. Somebody's preparing the dough. There's more than one person preparing the dough. Whoever has the might, the muscle to knead the dough. Somebody's going to get the boards for the bread to put on. Somebody's going to get the oats to see how warm or cold the oven is. And somebody's going to keep watch of the oven. None of you might know what that's like or might not experience that. But growing up in this Western way of doing things, I did not appreciate that because I was always taught your way of life is archaic. I'm thankful that I went to law school. I hated it, but I'm thankful. I'm very thankful that I went because it reaffirmed that their wisdom, their knowledge that they passed down to us, those core values, prayer, language, nurturing, they are our PhDs, our environmentalists, our social workers, our judges, our peacemakers. What they had shared and what's in my DNA, I would have Nobody can ever get that from a college or from a university. So what's liberating for me is knowing what's going on back home. Knowing that we have a place, a purpose, and a way of doing things. So with that, I'm liberated, and I'm getting to re-educate the educated, my own people and those around me, and want to continue to share this work. Indigenous peacemaking is transformative, it's restorative, it's healing, all in one. It's life. And so with that, I pass it to Mike.
Yeah, liberation. Hi, what's up? That's my homie over there in the corner. When I think about liberation, I think about this question so often, obviously because we do liberation work. But when I think of liberation, I think of joy, I think of peace, I think of access to thriving, I think of autonomy, I think of power. I think the power to make my own decisions without interruptions, without someone telling me what I should do and what I should not do. I think of health. I think of overall well-being. I think of breath. I think of soul. I think of playing in the streets. I think, when I was growing up, we used to play red light, green light, stop. Anybody ever heard of that? That's what I think of liberation. I think of the ability to play. And the question that I wrestle with is, what does it look like to both call for liberation now and experience liberation now in spite of the circumstances? I think of Bush Harbors. I don't know if y'all know this, but enslaved African people used to sneak off in the woods, and they used to sing and worship and dance and beat drums. And when I think about that, I think about the stars, and in midst of everything that they had going against them, they created a space where they can be. That felt like liberation in the midst of oppression. And so I think that we have the ability to do that now. Even as we foreshadow what liberation can be when we fight and kill the legal system, we have the ability to create those spaces today, right now. And so when I think about that. I think about how am I doing it in my own life? How am I defeating my own self-negative talk, my own irregulated nervous systems, the harm that happened to me so that I can feel safe in my own body? How can I encourage that for the bodies that are around me too so they can feel safe in their own body? And then how can we live and be in safe and well? Is what I think about. And so I think that's liberation for me. That's a vision of collectivism, a communal identity, a oneness, and a sense of play with it. Yeah.
I think for me, it's kind of like easy. It's based on healing, right? Matter of fact, Miriam's here. She told me this one time. She said, trauma will rob you. And I thought about that. I was like, wow, it don't matter if you gave me, I thought I was doing well before I went to prison, right? But literally the trauma that I was dealing with caused me to lose everything. And if you could give me anything in the world, but if I don't deal with my traumas, I'm gonna lose it. So, and it's because I'm beholden to my traumas. I can't navigate around them. In order for me to be liberated, I have to heal from them. So to me, that's easy on a personal level. I would say, for me, also, it's really fueled by the people that are incarcerated still that I loved, that I walked with, who helped me heal, who I couldn't be here without them. And the thing is that if the misnomer is that most prisons are violent, people are ignorant in there, but those are the smartest men that I know. And it's just, and I think society's being robbed by not having the people out here. Yeah. I mean, and the environments that attack it the most is the Black and the brown communities. So I mean, to me, that's important. Just to speak on it on that note. And just to add to that is that it's a whole army of people who are incarcerated as children or emerging adults, so they say, that are incarcerated throughout the nation. I don't think none of them should be in prison because brains were still developing as children. I was one. So it's like, I mean, Mike said it best. If one of us is not free, none of it is not free, right? So, and it's just as simple as that. So I won't be happy and satisfied to like, oh, my brothers come home, especially the ones I know who do the work and the serious work. I won't be happy till they come home, and that's what we're gonna continue to do.
All right. Leaving very little room for you all. Invite you to share anything, prayers, blessings, questions, thoughts.
I'm gonna pass you the mic because there's a live stream here.
I was 17 when I was locked up, and to hear your story has really helped me heal today. So I really appreciate you and everyone on the panel as well.
Right. I don't know what to say. You really touched my heart because you told my story too. I spent 52 years in incarceration. I've been home a year, January 25th of last year. So, I spent 12 years in a maximum security area, and it was harsh. They tried to break me, but something inside of me wouldn't yield to it. They told me I would die in prison. Many times I came close to it, but the master of the universe had a different story. Here today.
Just a heads up, we got 5 minutes before lunch happens.
Thanks for everything. Thanks for contributing. Keep up the good work. I was formerly incarcerated here in Manhattan years ago under the late Robert Morgenthau, who could pass for Freddy Krueger.
I just want to say on the get out the way. We don't need to get out the way. We need to get together. Because our power is in numbers. And everyone in here is working toward the same thing, ending the harm of mass incarceration and abolishing the system. That's what we're here for, I'm thinking. So the thing is not to get out the way, but to link up and make it happen, because we need everybody doing what they're doing to win this revolution that we're in. So it ain't about getting out the way. It's about making space and working together and sharing and building that collective power so we can win.
That's right.
Good afternoon, everyone. So I have a question. So, I work in the nonprofit sector in New York City, doing change work with a lot of people who I love. And when you work in this nonprofit sector, it causes so much harm to Black women, to queer people, to trans people. And it gets to a point where, you feel like you're pouring out of an empty cup, And sometimes it feels like you have to be in this nonprofit space to really cause the change, because where else are you going to go? And so my question to the panel is, how can we continuously develop and create change work when we work in these nonprofit spaces with white leadership that reinforce white supremacist ideals and don't always understand the value of restorative justice? Yeah.
I'll say briefly. First of all, sorry that you have to experience that, sister. Just take a break there. And that's real for people. That was real for me too. I think there's a difference between, and also a small caution that restorative justice is becoming so. It's not even peacemaking anymore. It's like a thing that's being baked into this nonprofit thing. So just to acknowledge that, but I also want to say that real change happens like Danielle Sarah is over there. She used to say to me, well, the revolution won't be funded. You know, she used to say that nonprofits is not the key to our liberation. It's a small chink into the armor. And that's even for just well nonprofits. So I would say that our liberation doesn't stop there. You don't have to cage yourself to that or subject yourself to that. You can do work as a collective in our communities. There are people in my neighborhood, grandmas, who go out and snatch gun out of people's hands, and they don't need funding. So you also don't have to, they do it out of pure love. So you also don't have to subject yourself to that. The second thing that I say, I think it's a call to nonprofits who exist in the same way. There's no such thing as the one. There is no such thing as the one leader who's going to make liberation happen under the gamut or umbrella of the nonprofit sector. It's got to be a collective. And so I do love this now thought that nonprofits, that's the tax status that they have, are thinking about what does it look like for collective leadership and breaking down that kind of power hierarchical standard that's within nonprofit spaces that I think should be recognized too. That nonprofits are now starting to think about they start to acknowledge their harm and be accountable for it and figure out new systems in which they can do this work under that tax bracket. So I would say that's what I would offer. That one, you can be freed from it. You can do this work with or without a title, right? Period. But two, there are people who thinking about this in a larger fashion. I would say find those.
That Christy Chapman, Armand Coleman, and Mike Milton. And it's lunchtime. Lunchtime. Thank you.
Can you hear me? A couple of quick announcements before lunch, everyone. The next panel will start in this room at 2:15. There's lunch in the concourse, but we also encourage folks to have lunch in the community just in case there's not enough, considering the volume of people here. We want to remind people that except for when you're eating, to keep your masks on. And lastly, try to be kind to one another, be patient with one another. There are a lot of people in this building. Things will take a lot of time, but plan accordingly, and we'll see you soon. Oh, one last thing. If you have a moment, try to go down to the concourse to see Holler's Non-Traditional Approaches Museum. It's a wonderful display of non-traditional approaches from the past and through the future. So, thank you.
What is that? only have an hour.
So, I've been trying to figure out like how to like feel. I don't think that's
You gotta say no more. Yeah, John told me. But I'm with it. I think I look at I saw the river. So we gonna be.